Hey everyone, it's Kelsey. This is Essentially Book. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. This video is literally being filmed the day it will go up because, like I said in previous videos, I'm adjusting to a new job that is full-time in office, and eventually I'll have flexibility where I can work from home some, but just right now as I'm getting into the swing of things, it's just easier to be in the office. So I don't have as much time or downtime as I used to have. There's that. And then I was going to be productive, and then Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race. And I am a lawyer. I love the Constitution. I love history. I love political science. I love political theory. And so this is like everything that is my interest. This is just something I'm passionate about, I care about. And so I'm very excited for the unknowingness in history that this is, and also just very thankful. Spoiler alert, I'm a Democrat. So if you're here, sorry, not sorry, but that's who I am. And I do, not to alienate anyone who's not, that's where I lean. That's what I'm passionate about outside of BookTube. So I'm very interested now in the political theory and how history and procedure will play out. That just blows my mind, and I think it's so cool because this is a historical moment, and the last month in politics in the United States has been absolutely bananas. So we're just living in unprecedented times. I'd like to live in precedented times like the rest of us. All this is to say that this video is just being filmed on the fly, and you're gonna get what you get today because I need to get a video up and I want my content to be up to date based on stuff I'm working on. But just know I would rather be watching all the news stations, reading polls and polling and focus groups. I'm very geeky. I'm doing a buddy read right now of Democracy in America with my friend Jane, and we were both laughing because we're we need to read this, but everything that's been going on right now, it just makes it hard to read books about history when you're we're living it right now. Anyways, this video, sorry, what a long intro. Today I'm going to talk about my 10 favorite, not even 10, I don't know how many yet, because again, we're doing this on the fly. Today I'm going to talk about the best books I've read so far this year, in the hopes that this makes it easy when I'm doing my end of the year content to kind of formalize what I've really been into and make it easy so that when I'm trying to think of all 10, because I don't know, I have very recency bias, so I will remember the things I most recently read and forget about all the great things I read in the back half. So we will see. I'm guessing it's under 10 because I have not given very many books 5 stars. But now that I'm a few months out from reading some books, as I'm going through this list, I think I might upgrade a few books to 5 stars because I've been thinking about them a lot. All right, the very first book that I'm going to put so far in the best books I've read so far this year is Mercury by Amy Jo Burns. This was her sophomore novel. This is about a roofing family, roofs, pounding nails on roofs, and it's 3 boys with 2 parents who are kind of a mess, and it's a family business. A girl, Marley, marries into this family as they are kind of just a lot, and she becomes almost like a mother figure to one of the boys. She marries one boy, and then another one of the boys is in love with her at a point. So she really steps in where their mother does not, and there's a big family secret that happens, and it's just a really cool look at the lies and the secrets we keep, the reasons why we do that, and then how hard and traumatic family can be. It's a really beautiful book. It is very different from Shiner, which was Amy Jo Burns' first book, which kind of took place in a deeply conservative religious family in the Appalachian Mountain area. That was more fast-paced. This was slower, more introspective, very character-driven. I loved it just as much. So I actually gave it 4 stars upon first read, but as the year has progressed, this is one I'm upgrading to 5 stars. All right, and then the next 2 actually have a fantasy lean. So I got entirely sucked into Throne of Glass this year and kind of towards the end of last year. So Kingdom of Ash was and obviously, honestly, both Tower of Dawn, Empire of Storm, Queen of Shadows, those were all 5-star reads for me, but Kingdom of Ash, because it was the concluding book, wrecked me. I honestly, I've read everything except the most recent Crescent City book, which, if you've been following, I've been meaning to reread the first 2 Crescent City books to read the 3rd one. I think Throne of Glass is her best work, and it was her debut work. I just think there's a lot more nuance and levels of story to that book. I think maybe A Court of Thorns and Roses is more propulsive, fast-paced and like good, but I think the character arcs in Throne of Glass are just so much better. I would say like for setting, plot, whatever, Crescent City is also good. Like I love them all, but I think Throne of Glass is her greatest work. So yes. And then Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. This is a part of the Practical Magic series. It's the first book following Maria and how the curse gets made, but it's her writing is so good, but I know it's not for everybody. Very character driven, not a lot of plot. But she just really does such a beautiful job of like showing the good and the bad about being in love with somebody and what love means from like a mother's love to like romantic love. Oh, it's so beautiful. I need to read one more book in that series and I'll be done, but I will sadly miss it because it's such a good series. I read Rules of Civility by Amor, Towles, and I give that 4 stars. I'm going to stick with that. But Table for Two, you guys have already seen me express my absolute love and devotion for that book. It's a book of short stories with a novella at the end that is actually a follow-up to Rules of Civility following Eve. I can't say enough good things about Amor Towles' writing. He is so good at really articulating the human condition, how funny life can be and how brutal it can be, but he just has this sense of writing that is kind of like, it's realistic yet funny. God, I love that man. And then Real Americans by Rachel Khong will be another one that I will put in my best books of the year. It follows 3 people, 3 generations of a family. It's not linear, so that was kind of weird, but it's about what it means to be an American, to be an immigrant in the United States. For one person, it looks at science. It looks at what happens when your parents like make a choice that has far-reaching implications for generations to come and how something beyond your control can impact you, even if you weren't alive at the time the choice was made. It is so good. There's kind of a little bit of like magical realism in it or scientific realism. I don't want to talk about it because it is a spoiler to like the overarching plot, but if you've read it, you'll kind of know with some of the story. But it was kind of realistic in a way that it could possibly happen down the road. I honestly want to get that. I read it as an ARC and I would love to get it as a permanent addition to my shelf. For a book that just like I had the most fun with and it found me at the perfect time, it was what I needed. It might not be like high quality writing, or high caliber literature, I guess, but What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. I love her and I loved this book. I loved the ancient, like it had mummy vibes. It was fun. It has history in it, which I love from the intro. If you guys didn't get that from me, like I do really like history and books that are well researched, and this one definitely was. And this has like light magic, so it's a good intro to fantasy if you're not someone who's really big into fantasy, but can handle maybe some more magical realism, light magic where there's no world building. What the River Knows. I am anxiously awaiting the sequel to this, which comes out this fall. I need to get it pre-ordered, honestly, but holy cow, I just love this. I flew through it, and it's like, it'd actually be perfect to read in the fall. Like it has the cozy vibes that I like to read in the fall. This is on my forever shelf. And then I read 11/22/63 finally. This is one of my 24 in 24. It's a dearly beloved book for a reason. I read this with a book club, which was so fun. I gave it 4 stars. I listened to most of it on audio. The audiobook narrator has nothing to do with the author. So the audiobook narrator ruined the female like love interest for me because she sounded like an 80-year-old Southern woman and she was 30 per this guy's voice. But this book is so clever. It literally put me in the worst book hangover I've been in years because this consumed so much of my time because I was trying to get it finished for book club. Like I think I read this over a course of like 1.5 weeks. The layers of this, the like implications of traveling back in time, the butterfly effect, it just covers so many things. And this is about a man who is tasked with preventing JFK from being murdered. And it deals with time travel and history. Things I love. I was utterly shocked. I'm not a huge Stephen King reader. Like I think I've read this and then The Stand. I just don't know. Sometimes I don't love how he writes about violence necessarily, and sometimes how he writes about women. But I think overall this is a 5-star read. There were a few things that didn't work for me, but it was because of the audio narrator and not the authors. I will gladly put this in my best books of the year so far. And then the final book that goes on to this list is going to be All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. I was very hesitant to pick this book up because I knew it involved a school shooting, and that's in the blurb, so it's not a spoiler. My husband's a teacher. It's a very sensitive thing. Our state had a school shooting earlier this year, so I was just very hesitant, but I'd heard so many good things about it. I got it on audio and loved it. The audio narration is so good, but takes place in the South. It follows a cop named Titus. He's like the police chief. And it's an elected position, and it looks at, there's this school shooting that's like the catalyst for everything, but then there becomes a serial killer situation, and then it touches on like the racial dynamics. Titus is Black in a very southern town, but it also looks at churches and like how the churches affect the community, like racism within churches, just racism in general, the impacts of policing on the community, and Titus is trying to like clean up the police force. It's just there's so many topics that it covers, but it was so good. So good. So again, those are things that I'm really interested in. Like I like the sociology of situations and like why we do what we do. I thought how the plot unraveled was so good. There are not a lot of spoilers. There's a lot of triggers for that book. So if you're gonna read it, know that, but it was so good. So I will say there's a couple honorable mentions that didn't make this list. I will just talk about those right now. So The Undermining of Twyla and Frank, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, Hula, and then Chain Gang All-Stars and Black Cake were ones that were 4-star reads, but there were enough issues with them for me that they wouldn't be a 5-star, so I'm not gonna put them on here. Those are the best books of the year I've read so far. Now I'm gonna go back to editing and watching like all the news coverage and probably dive into some like political history reading tonight for funsies. So that's me as a person. I'm so glad you're here. I'm curious like if you've read any of these, if you agree, but also what's the best book you've read so far this year? Maybe I'll make a video on that because I'm wanting to read. I haven't had the best reading year yet, I feel like, but I have a lot of books on deck that I'm very excited for, and some videos coming up that I'm also very excited for that I think there's a lot of potential for the back half of the year. So that's good. We're gonna end this video on that note. So good seeing everybody. Have a great week.